Dragon Quest III launched in 1988 for the Nintendo Entertainment System, or Famicom as it's called here in Japan, and was a cultural phenomenon at the time. People took a day off school or work just to play it, and lined up overnight to get their hands on copies which instantly sold out everywhere. 36 years later, in 2024, history has repeated itself, with its new remake also selling out quickly, and immediately becoming the best-selling game of the year in Japan in its first week. So, does Dragon Quest III HD-2D Remake live up to its historical legacy, as well as its recent hype? In short, yes it does. While in the West, the Dragon Quest series may not be anywhere near as popular as it is here in Japan, but its popularity is still growing. And with this new remake, Dragon Quest is poised to become more popular than ever before. So, should you get your hands on it? Whether you're a Dragon Quest or JRPG veteran or newcomer, this review is for you. I've spent about 45 hours with it, so I'll go in depth into the story, gameplay and performance to give you a detailed evaluation of all aspects of the game. By the end, you'll know if it's worth picking up. Alright, let's get into it. To give a quick overview of the story, Dragon Quest III puts you in the role of a nameable protagonist, of which you can choose to be male or female. Appearance A or Appearance B. On your 16th birthday, the king tasks you with setting out across the kingdom to defeat Baramos the Archfiend and stop his growing influence. This was also your absent father's mission before he vanished under mysterious circumstances. From here, you can generate 3 more party members, and together you must battle monsters far and wide across the land, exploring more and more dangerous dungeons and besting more and more powerful bosses. And well, that's basically it to the story. It's very much an authentic remake of a 1988 NES game in this sense. The story is paper thin, and it's basically just go here, do this, get this thing, good, now do it again, for most of your playtime. While closer to the end, you'll start to reveal what happened to the protagonist's father. But there are a few surprising twists, but a narrative-driven character drama this game is certainly not. Your party members do not speak and have no personalities of their own. I suppose that makes sense as you can generate as many party members as you like, which makes sense for this game's gameplay, but at the expense of intrigue and drama. But this is not a negative thing at all. Being based on a game from a different era, it gave me a lot of nostalgia for old RPGs like Pokemon Red and Blue. Light on plot, where the environments, character and enemy designs, and atmosphere do all the heavy lifting. With only the basic elements of a story, it's up to the player to fill in the blanks with their imagination. In this 2024 glow-up, the epic art style and orchestral music certainly make filling in those gaps a little easier. So it's not a particularly deep story, but it is a hell of a vibe, which serves the more important aspect of Dragon Quest, its gameplay. For more than 3 decades, the Dragon Quest style of RPG has always been one of the best around, and this remake is no exception. As you lead a very customizable party of 4, it's quite overwhelming to begin with. NPCs will give you some hints about what kind of party you should make, and the game will generate you a decent default party if you're not sure, but even then it will take a while for the customizable nature of the game to make sense, especially as there are 9 different character classes to choose from. Then you have to figure out what their moves do and how to actually win the battles. If you're not used to Dragon Quest, there's a bit of trial and error involved, and there might be some frustrations here and there. Thankfully, beginners can lower the difficulty, the easiest of which makes it impossible to die. I wouldn't recommend playing the whole game like this, but it's a good quality of life feature for newcomers. By default, your 3 extra party members are computer controlled, so they'll demonstrate their class skills for you. But like the easy difficulty setting, after a while you should disable this and control them yourself. And once you figure it out, boy oh boy does it become addictive as hell. There's nothing more satisfying than taking out a large group of enemies in the most efficient way possible, making the most of your physical attacks, magic attacks, buffs, debuffs, and healing spells. And once you think you've figured it out, about a third of the way through the game you'll unlock the option to change your party members' classes, keeping the skills they've already learned as well as their stat growths. This is how you make even more powerful fighters. However, changing their class resets their level back to level 1, so you have to partake in that old JRPG cliche and level grind them back up. Now, a lot of people are quick to criticize JRPGs and especially Dragon Quest for their incessant level grinding, but I want to stress that it didn't feel boring or a waste of time for me, but a satisfying part of the gameplay loop. You can set the battle speed to ultra fast, hang out in a dungeon with metal slimes that yield high XP, and watch your characters level up relatively quickly. If, like me, you grew up with Game Boy or DS era Pokemon, doing this might make you realize that this repetitive level grind has actually been missing from your life. And thanks to the Switch's handheld mode, I could level grind in bed or on the train to work, turning the music down and putting some YouTube on in the background, then focusing up and playing on TV mode for the more important parts of the game. So yeah, I don't get the complaints about Dragon Quest being too grindy. Grinding grinding is the game, and if you aren't prepared to do it, then maybe Dragon Quest isn't for you. But if you can find the joy in doing it, then you're going to have a great time with Dragon Quest III HD-2D Remake. Once again, I realized that level grinding a 2D RPG on a handheld has indeed been missing from my life for the last decade, so I got an unexpectedly nostalgic treat in addition to a fun new experience. Didn't expect that going in, but boy am I glad I got it. Well, that's battle, so how about exploration? Unless you have the optional objective markers turned on, you're going to find it quite challenging to figure out where to go and what to do next. While NPCs will give you hints, it's basically just stumble around until you find the right place to go or right thing to do. I can imagine this being fun back in the late 80s, comparing notes with your co-workers or classmates on how to beat this lengthy game. That was fun for me with Pokemon back in the 90s too, but in this internet age where we can just Google the answer or put the game down in favor of playing one of the million other games in our backlogs, there's not really much point in playing the game like this. I encourage you to turn objective markers on for a smoother experience. Without the objective markers, I would have either googled what to do or just given up entirely, so they are a godsend in this day and age. And the final new addition to Dragon Quest III in its remade form is the new Monster Arena. As you explore, you'll encounter friendly monsters in the overworld. Finding them adds new skills to the Monster Wrangler class, as well as unlocking the chance to use them in the Monster Arena. To be honest, I found the Monster Arena kinda boring. You can't even select the monster's moves, you just have to sit there and watch them fight. While this does reward you with a lot of useful items and such, you can still get through the game without doing it. I barely touched the Monster Arena as it didn't grab me at all, but it's a nice little additional gimmick for returning players. So, to conclude the gameplay section, it's worth remembering that at its core, despite its very thick layers of polish, Dragon Quest III HD-2D Remake is still very much built on the bones of a 1988 NES game. New quality of life features do indeed reduce how overwhelming it all is, but expect to grind and don't expect it to be easy. This game loves to kick you when you're down, especially after halfway through, where powerful monsters will cast instant kill moves and just wipe you out. Thankfully, the autosave has got your back, and you won't waste that much time, but be prepared for some frustrations like this here and there. The battle system still has a timeless quality, and playing this you can really sense the power this game has as a historical artifact. Keeping in mind that this was an insanely popular and successful game in 1980s Japan, the influence of Dragon Quest III's gameplay can be seen throughout all kinds of RPGs. Especially Pokemon to this day. So while it may challenge you, you are still playing the best version of one of gaming history's most important titles. Once you get the hang of it, it's an addictive, rewarding, and ultimately very satisfying JRPG. So, let's talk about performance. I debated getting the PS5 version, but I am glad I went with the Switch version for the handheld option. You're going to want the handheld version for the aforementioned reasons, and well, playing a remake of an NES game on the latest Nintendo platform just feels right, doesn't it? Although, being the creaky Switch, expect a few performance hiccups, but they're hardly major. Most of the time, in battles and overworld, the frame rate is smooth and transitions in and out of battle are near instantaneous, about 1 second. However, when visiting towns, this is where the frame rate noticeably dips. There are a lot more background details going on in towns, so it's understandable, if just a tad disappointing. But as towns are safe havens where there is no battling or exploring to be done, performance doesn't really need to be up to the task as there is no real gameplay going on here. So yeah, a slight shame, but this performance issue never interrupts your gameplay, and I don't think the everyday gamer is really going to notice it. One small performance quirk is just how hot my Switch got and how noisy its fan also got while playing this. The last time my Switch's fan went this hard was playing Xenoblade 3, so I'm not sure why an HD 2D game is as power hungry as that, but whatever. And speaking of HD 2D visuals, what a treat for the eyes. I've never really understood all the hype around the HD 2D art style until now. I tried Octopath Traveler way back when and couldn't get into it, but I feel like Square have perfected the art style here in Dragon Quest III. Backgrounds are stunning, and yet the pixelated characters never feel at odds with them. It's a visually unique art style that serves to remind you of the game's 1980s origins, while still giving you an experience that wasn't possible back then. If you did play the original back then, playing this must be like how you remember it, not how it really was. And for newcomers, you can feel like you're playing a classic game without any of the downsides that come with revisiting 30-plus-year-old titles. While I loved Dragon Quest XI, this may now be the best looking Dragon Quest game, so I'm glad we're going to get more HD 2D remakes in addition to new 3D ones. Finally, the music. Thank God they went with an orchestrated score on on this one. Last year's entirely MIDI Dragon Quest Monsters The Dark Prince made me want to play the whole game on mute, so hearing the Tokyo Symphonic Orchestra going hard on the classic tunes is a real blessing. This is how a fantasy JRPG should sound. Epic, sweeping, orchestral, motivating. I'd buy this OST on CD or vinyl if I could. Classic Dragon Quest themes arranged in the absolute best possible way is all we needed. To conclude, Dragon Quest III HD-2D Remake is an essential game for those both passionate or simply curious about Dragon Quest, Japanese role-playing games, or gaming history in general. While there may be some difficulties and frustrations that come with building on the foundation of a game from a different era in gaming, this remake does everything it possibly can to make the game a smoother experience for newcomers, while still retaining the challenge expected by veterans. Having polished up the pixelated original to a shiny platinum standard of the HD 2D art style, and having transitioned away from the bleeps and bloops of MIDI synthesizers to a full orchestra, Dragon Quest has never looked or sounded this damn good. Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake is undoubtedly the best version of a classic JRPG, as well as a very good game in its own right. Essential playing for JRPG fans, whether veteran or newcomer, and one of the best games of 2024. Yo, thanks for watching until the end. How about you? Have you played Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake? What game would you like to see remade in HD 2D? Let me know down in the comments. Personally, I'd like to see Earthbound remade in HD 2D, but that'll probably never happen. A man can dream. Fun fact, in Japanese, this game is titled Dragon Quest III Soshite Densetsu e, which I guess you could translate as Dragon Quest III, and so the legend begins. They kept that title exactly the same as the NES original. I like that way more than the unsubtle and unsexy HD 2D remake subtitle they went with in English, but it is what it is. What do you think about the title? Anyway, if you enjoyed this review and you want to see more unbiased reviews of predominantly Japanese games, hit like and subscribe to help a brother out. With the Switch 2 coming out next year, 2025 is sure to be a big year for Japanese games, so I can't wait to make more reviews right here on this channel. So have a good one, go play some Dragon Quest, and I'll see you next time.